and people are giving PM Carney credit for that. And I think credit is due, maybe,
Mm.
maybe not. Time will tell. But I think the other thing that's happened, like you mentioned, is the closing of borders for international students. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Three Wise Guys. I'll with the intro here. So no one said "oh, okay" or any of those filler words that I hate. So I appreciate you guys coming in. Today is a very different setup. You see two black people on the couch. Okay, it's usually one black guy and like an ambiguous person and an Asian guy. But uh, apparently he's West Asian. He's not Arab. He's West Asian. So like that's what Iranians and Persians are called. But today it's two Nigerians. No, not just white guys. Two Nigerians. Two Yoruba boys specifically. Um, and yeah, I'm excited. Luke is here. Luke,
Hello.
yeah, I don't know. Luke is he's what's the name of Joe Rogan's guy? Is it like Jamie or
Jamie, yeah.
yeah, Luke is
Yeah.
the Jamie for this episode. I think last episode Arya was the Jamie for the episode. But this episode, Luke is the Jamie and he's letting the Yoruba boys show him how it's done. Um but yeah, I think you guys know me. I'll let my buddy here introduce himself. Go for it, bro.
Hello, my name is Tolu. I'm an engineer, software engineer. I'm based in Toronto. I know Dolakwa from grade 12. We went to boarding school together and the same university as well. And yeah, I'm here to talk about buying versus renting in Toronto. I feel like that's a constant topic in this country. So I hope this is interesting. I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. And yeah, Tolu, thanks for joining.
Cool.
Okay,
I got a question.
go.
So you always have this idea of like what a boarding school is.
Hmm.
And like I feel like I've always like I don't know, you see them in like movies and stuff and like TV shows and they always have this like very grandiose, like it seems like it's all very like secretive. There's like a lot of stuff going on. It's very elite. Like I just want to like ask, like is that like how true is that? Like is that like a thing?
I think if you if you basically like water down the experience, it's a bunch of kids going to school in buses and school uniforms. It's private school, catered food, so I guess it is kind of true, but it doesn't feel that way in
And
reality. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Like I think Tolu, like when we were in there, like it didn't feel like it was some secretive. Like I think the brotherhood was dope. Like me and Tolu are in a friend group that have known each other since grade 12. How many years is that now? It's like 11.
11 years, yeah.
It's like 11 years. And like we're like like I don't know, we went to Miami. Like we've done trips, we do dinners, we do fun things. Like it's I think that's kind of like the most important part is like the experience itself, man. You know, like it was great. Like for what it was. Like I don't know. Did you go to boarding school in Nigeria?
I went to boarding school in Nigeria as well. That's a totally different
Okay,
experience.
here we go.
Yeah.
So I never did boarding school in Nigeria. So I'm just glad that that's my own idea of boarding school.
It's I think my experience was okay, and
Okay.
for certain people it's like torture.
Boarding
really?
school in Nigeria was CIC.
In Nigeria.
Okay, Nigeria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
I thought it was torture. So
by torture as in like the schooling was like really hard or like the people or
Schooling is hard. There's this concept of seniority where if you're in like grade 10, a student in grade 12 is basically has the same power as a teacher. They can tell you
oh
what to do. They can,
yeah.
and you get spanked in Nigeria and punished if you like misbehave. And the student in grade 12 has that same power. So yeah, people would get bullied, things like that. My school was like okay, because it was fairly new, but a lot of big boarding schools, they've over time, it's you can have like really terrible experiences there.
Yeah.
That does not sound like a recipe for success, man. Like you take a grade 12 like kid and like you give him power over like his peers.
Yeah. That's the Nigerian boarding school experience.
Yeah.
Except like with a few exceptions. And like I think like maybe when we're growing up, I wonder what it is now. I'm very sure there's still a decent amounts like that. I know you have younger brothers. Like was I don't know like if
The age gap isn't
oh,
that
that's not
much. So
crazy.
yeah,
So
the
yeah, it's not
experience
the same.
isn't so different.
Yeah, no, it's pretty. But CIC, like the boarding school we went to here was, like for what it was pretty good. Like we didn't like the food, but it was good food. Like looking back at it now, like we got 3 square meals a day.
Yeah, it just wasn't Nigerian food, and
Yeah,
we were kids, and it also wasn't fast food. So
that's
Yeah.
very true. That's very true. Like I'm seeing 3 square meals a day. You're laughing. Like do you eat 3 square meals
I
a
don't.
day?
No, that's why I'm laughing. I'm
Yeah.
like, as an adult, you're like, no, this isn't guaranteed, man. Like,
It's not guaranteed. On Saturdays we had like the waffle maker.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I like my girlfriend also went there, but she went there like after we left,
Mm.
and then she brought that up recently. I was like, "Fuck!" Like I remember Saturday mornings. That was like one of the few joys. It was like you could go there, unlimited waffles with the cream.
This is
And
the
like,
first time I've thought about that in 10 years, but
really?
yeah,
Yeah,
that was
dude.
nice actually.
Yes, like that was like one of the good things. And then there was the gym and shit. Like I saw like I reunited with one of our friends that went to school, like at a work event, funny enough.
Mm.
And like he was like known as the gym guy. Like
Oh.
back when I don't want to say his name because I don't want to put him on blast, but like we can figure it out. And it was just so crazy to see him because like back then he looked like the huge, like the biggest guy. Like I'm not saying like he's no longer like he's still like a very fit like, but it was like oh it's like now like we kind of look so like like we're like the same height like maybe I'm a little bit taller and I was like fuck like, damn man it's good to see like 10, 11 years like I remember his face looked so different he had like a beard now like I was like sheesh it's crazy how like that goes on but anyways we finished boarding school we went to U Ottawa together we didn't plan that.
Yeah, that was not planned. I didn't even know you were going to Ottawa.
I didn't know you were going to U Ottawa either.
Yeah.
I think we just saw each other in class. Like I think,
Yeah, probably some first year.
yeah, so
First
first year class. Like I think that's just where we saw each other. And we had like I remember we had Python together. I think we had a couple other classes together. And then like like in U Ottawa, like we had like a little bit of a friend group with all the people we went to school with. That's where I met these guys.
Mm.
U Ottawa as well. And then we moved to Toronto. I don't know when you moved to Toronto. When did you move to Toronto?
August 2021. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, almost 5 years now. Yeah. What
I
about you?
moved to Toronto August 2021 as well.
Oh,
yeah, I
damn.
was gonna say that was
That was
literally the same summer as
exact
you.
month.
Oh.
Like August 2021. Our mutual friend, Zoe moved September. I remember, but like yeah, August 2021 was when I moved. That was when I moved to Toronto. So yeah, like we've been in Toronto the exact same amount of time as well. It's kind of insane, but we moved to Toronto. I remember when like Luke and Aria, our viewers know Aria, lived in Toronto all this time.
Hmm.
I never knew I wanted to move to Toronto. I used to talk shit about Toronto. I used to be like, "Oh, I'll be in Toronto all my life," because everybody talks so much about Toronto. I used to hate on it because that was who I was. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, Luke. We're like, "Oh, we'll move to Toronto when we get jobs, and the 3 of us will buy a house together." Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's such oh wow, that's yeah, because when COVID was happening
Yeah.
and Ari and I was like living in Toronto, but not unemployed, but we were like working kind of bullshit jobs, you know what I mean? It was like fully remote jobs that like you moved your mouse like an hour at work and like you were fine. And like we would come up to Ottawa and see the Lapo and everything.
True.
We were like, oh yeah, like why don't we just like buy a house with no concept at all? Honestly, at that time, if you asked me like, okay, like you have infinite money, go do what? Like go do it. I wouldn't really like know like what is the process of like applying, getting in touch, and even when we started renting, we didn't know that like we needed like a real estate agent to represent us in
Yes,
Toronto.
in Toronto.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that when I first moved here. I think that's kind of crazy.
It
It's
is.
insane. Like we needed like yeah. So like wow. Like yeah. This is so
This
small.
zoom back, like
Like
yeah.
zoom back, but it's so like it's just the whole process. like, cause we're just, I remember I didn't have like a dime to my name. No, I did.
We had
Yeah.
debt,
No,
actually.
well, okay, yeah, like I did have debt actually. I had credit card debt, but I was rich on Serb.
Yo.
I remember Serb gave me the confidence to move to Toronto and pay like 3 months, like, first, last, and second to the last rents because it was COVID, right? Things were a little bit competitive.
Yeah.
So I paid essentially 3 months rent at once. Like, I was feeling good off of that Serb money, not having to work. So like, like all of this to say, like I was the concept of buying a house. I basically had no money. Like, all the money I had was given to me by the government. I didn't have to spend it. I couldn't spend it because it was COVID. So I was like at home, and like, I mean, these guys, like, I knew, like, I don't know, they're in debt, but like, I knew they have money. And we're like, oh, we'll figure it out. We'll buy a house.
Like, how hard could it be?
Yeah, like it can't be that crazy. Like, that's the next things to do, right? Like, you move to the big city, you buy a house. Like, when you were moving to Toronto, were you even thinking of, like, take back to
21, yeah.
Tolu? Like, what was your concept of like renting, and like, were you thinking, oh, I buy a house, or were you thinking I get like a one bed, or like trying to get roommates, or?
Um, I thought about getting a one bed, but it became very obvious quickly that that was too expensive. The thought of buying a house did not occur to me because I didn't have money. I was also my worry was, oh, how do I help my parents like pay tuition and all of that? So
Got it, got it, got it.
and buying a house seemed like something you do after a few years of work, because like things, every website I looked at, I'd see $1 million, and I couldn't like fathom how could I pay that kind of money?
Yeah.
Even obviously it's a mortgage, but it just wasn't something in the realm of possibility for me. Yeah.
Yeah. You see, you're smart. Like, you actually thought about it. I don't
Yeah.
think I thought about it. I think we were just
It
talking.
wasn't that I thought about it. It was just very clear that this is not feasible.
Fair. Yeah, I just didn't know. I didn't know. And again, high on Cirque money, I was like, oh, I can do a one bed by myself.
How much was Serb? Like, was that like 2K a month?
It was 2K a month.
Mm.
But like, my rent in Ottawa was peanuts.
Yeah, it was like
It
nothing.
was nothing. So like, if it was 2K a month, I think my rents in Ottawa
Like
was
500,
like
600.
500. Yeah, between 5 and 600. And so
Disgusting, man.
I wonder what inflation was like, because everyone just had like spare money during that period. Like,
Yes.
what were they spending the money on?
Nothing. Like
Some crypto.
yeah, so crypto,
Oh,
GameStop.
that's true.
Fair enough,
GameStop.
yeah.
That was the era
Mm.
for all. Literally, you're right. That was. I mean, and like inflation. If you remember, Biden came in. Inflation was like 9% or 8 to 9%. When Biden 7 to 8%. I might be tripping. Maybe check. Like, yeah, I'll say fact check that. Don't listen to me. But inflation was high post COVID.
Yeah, the money printing
Yeah, the
didn't
money
help.
printed. I was like, I tell people like, COVID was horrible for a lot of people. For me, COVID changed my life. Like, it changed like this money saving. I moved to Toronto, big city, but all of that to say, like, moving into Toronto, I lived in a one bed. I was paying 1,800 a month back then. Couldn't afford that. I managed to do it for like a year, which is like insane to me. But like, that year was when, like, going through paying 1,800 a month plus utilities plus internet plus everything on my salary back then.
You became an adult.
I became an adult. I was forced to become an adult. So like, and that was just like as a renter. And then like after that, I think that was when I started to understand like, hey, like I remember like I would see everyone living in my neighborhood. Like, these people, they look very well to do. I remember I talked to like my one neighbor because I lived in like a basement townhouse. I don't know if you ever came to that spot.
I don't think so.
Yeah, like I lived in a basement townhouse, like downtown, like downtown.
Actually wild.
Yeah, it's
So, like,
pretty
that
wild.
one.
I was checking House Sigma yesterday, and I saw there was like a townhouse available there. I was like, now I can afford this, but like, will I? Maybe. But I remember talking to one of my neighbor, and he was like, oh yeah, like I'm an investment banker at CIBC, at Scotiabank or CIBC. I was like, am I like, like, am I in the right place? You know? And then he asked me what I did, and I was like, I'm in tech sales, and he was like, no, I'm kind of in sales too. And I was like, really? He was like, yeah, like as an investment banker, that's kind of like my job. Like, You had to sell people on deals. That was the first time it figured, like, it hit me that investment banking is really just sales. It was like sales and finance. Anyways, that's besides the point. But that whole experience was, like Tolu said, my adulting moments where I was like, oh shit, like rent, mortgages, house prices. I learned what amortization means. Like, I think it probably took me like maybe like a year later to learn about like property tax. It was like a gradual thing, but I think for most people, like owning a home is like a dream or is kind of like a life checkpoint. However, for us, all three of us that live in Toronto, either born and raised in Scarborough or immigrants that went to boarding school, went to university, and then moved to Toronto, it's an insane. It's just different.
Yeah.
Is whatever anyone talks about housing, like the Toronto situation is different. Okay, so like I'm curious too, like what was like when and like how like did housing become a thing for you? Like when did it become? Because you mentioned like oh like it wasn't even feasible, so you weren't even really thinking about it. But like for you, like what was that like adulting moment with like whether it was renting or seeing like a home price or whatever it was? What was that moment for you where it became real?
Well, first I had to think about it because my my roommate, one of my roommates moved to New York. I got another roommate. He was getting married, so I was like, oh, do I find another roommate or do I rent a one bedroom or do I buy? Um,
Mm,
and there's something about being in Canada where you just have this itch that I should go buy property for some reason. I don't understand it. So I watched a bunch of videos to see what was better.
mm,
Um, I think deep down I prefer to rent because I felt like it's less responsibility, but because like you don't have to handle maintenance,
Mm.
you don't care about the lawn, you don't. But I was like, what is the actual better choice? Older people will tell you that buy a home, you will get equity. What does that mean? I'm investing in the stock market, so do I really need a home to build wealth?
mm.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of like how I started to think about this. I literally like needed to figure out where I would live, and I started to think, do I buy, do I rent? Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's like a really interesting thing that you're like touching upon there, where it seems like for you and actually for a lot of us in our generation, it feels like the thought of buying a house comes more often in terms of like, oh, I'm moving into like a different phase in life, or
Yeah.
like I'm making a change in lifestyle, which is why maybe I should buy a house. But like, you're right, like my parents definitely speak to me in terms of even like a potentially like a home for me to live in as an investment.
Yeah.
Whereas like, for example, for us, like we all invest, but I don't think like we think about like the buying, maybe except for Aria, but like the buying of assets as like a primary vessel for investments. Do you think like that's like a Toronto thing? Do you think that's like a our generation thing? Or like where does that come from like when it comes to you?
I'm honestly not sure because I know it's not a uniquely Canadian thing. I think it's more of I think it's more rampant here. But I know in America too, there's this desire to like go into a home because like that's the American dream,
Mm,
right? That's what's been sold. Your parents bought a house, and that's how they generated wealth. So I feel like that's the way we've seen. I wouldn't say our parents taught us this, but
mm,
that's how we learned that they generated wealth. And our knowledge of investment also only like came during COVID because everyone had spare cash and they were trying to buy GameStop. Um, so like the only real safe way our generation knows how to generate wealth is through housing, which is what our parents used. But the reality is that housing is not the only way. It's also like not the most optimal way to build wealth. Um, so yeah, I guess we can go deeper into that. Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. I heard. Let's get into that math a little bit, right? Like housing math, quote unquote, because there's renting, there's buying. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, like why, like all that rent that you're paying to a landlord, you could be used to pay down more. Like,
That's a big one, yeah.
yeah, like I heard that, and it's I know I'd like to think I know a little bit better now, and like we'll ask you because like we brought you on because like you built something, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Um, yeah, so like that's one of the things like paying rent to a landlord versus putting rent down for a mortgage. This is what you mentioned about maintenance. Like where we're recording now is a house,
Yeah.
and I can tell you, and Luke, maybe you can reiterate here. We've lived here for how many years? 3?
Yeah, just 3 years.
How much maintenance? How much do you think in maintenance our landlord has had to spend? Because I know you've been very insensitive with some of the maintenance costs that you're like, oh, why is it taking so long? Like, how much in maintenance do you think our landlord has had to spend? Like, and then how much in maintenance have we done? Have we spent like on our own without our landlord in the 3 years? Like, just give a rough number.
Yeah, it's like first of all, like we wouldn't be spending like several $100s every spring to like redo our backyard
No.
if we didn't like care about this place. If we owned it, like each of us would be independently spending that ourselves, like
Yeah.
on our gardens and everything like that. What Dee's referring to is like in the time we've lived here, like our washer and dryer both have failed, and basically it was like a process of the landlord coming in repairing it, and then it wouldn't work, and then they eventually would go and replace it. But obviously, like washers and dryers, not cheap appliances, like
Yeah.
$1,000 minimum. Not to mention like kind of let's say the cost of being a landlord and think like having a
There's HVAC
tenant.
too. Remember? I don't know if something happened.
Oh,
There's
you're
something wrong
right,
with
with
the HVAC.
the furnace,
Yeah,
yeah,
the
or
furnace.
something like that
They had
too.
to do that as well.
I
Like
feel bad for the
the
landlord.
landlord, like she had. This is just in 3 years, and maybe we just happened to be here the 3 years where everything was supposed
It
to
is an
go.
older house,
Yeah,
so
it is.
maybe there's something there, but
Yeah, like Luke was mentioning, we spent I don't know, like we throw house parties. Like I don't know if I've invited, but anyways, it doesn't matter. We throw house parties. We clean the backyard. I don't know if you see. We could take you when we're done recording to chill. We have a backyard. We maintain it. We've probably spent in the 3 years maybe like $1,000, excluding furniture, because we did buy backyard furniture as well, right?
yeah.
So like I feel like if we go washing machine, furnace, like we're probably at like 3 to 5 grand.
Absolutely. And if we owned this place, we would be doing way more other things. Like
That's very true.
like an example is like the air vent in my room is shared with the bathroom.
Mm,
Right? So I'm not gonna do something about that because I'm like, this is a place I'm renting. Like I'm not
sure.
gonna live here. What's the point of me spending like money to do that? But then like if I did own the place, I would be like literally doing renovations, which would like God knows how much that is.
Literally.
Right? So
But yeah, like just bringing that up as more housing math, like maintenance is big. Like I mentioned, I learned about property taxes as well. There's carrying costs. I don't know, like maybe totally like tell me how you think about like housing math and like how you've come to think about it.
I think one way to look at it is your rent is the maximum you'll pay in a month to live there. If anything breaks, just tell your landlord and it's your responsibility to fix it. But as a homeowner, your mortgage is the minimum amount you'll pay. Um, and a house, although like in the long term, the value of your home goes up, but a house is technically a depreciating asset. It's basically like falling apart all the time, and that's where the maintenance cost comes in. You have to spend money for upkeep to ensure it's still in a good state. You also live there; it's your own, so you want to take care of it. So that's the land itself is really what goes up, but the house itself is falling apart.
Mm.
Um, there's also like property taxes. So maintenance, property taxes. I think those are like the two main costs outside of your mortgage, and these two costs are technically like unrecoverable. Um, so for example, if people say I bought this home for like $500,000, I sold it for 1 million. When you think about the profit, they made like
Mm-hmm.
$500,000 in profit, but we never actually like know all of the unrecoverable costs that went into this place during the period that they owned it. And that actually like shows the true, I guess, the true returns on your home. So it's you're never people are never like making as much money as they say they do because there's a lot of like phantom costs that they just forget about or that they don't account for. So I think that's something people usually don't think about when it comes to the math of owning versus renting a place.
Yeah, and unrecoverable costs, to be clear, maintenance, property taxes,
Yeah.
those are like the two big.
Yeah. And I think property taxes in Toronto are like 0.7% of the housing cost. So if you run it up to one, maintenance can be 1 to 2% of like the value of the home as well in a year. So you're kind of looking at 2 to 3% of the value of your home every year in like unrecoverable costs. So
Mm.
there's like a lot of money to be spent outside of the mortgage itself.
And I would imagine, and sorry, I wanted to maybe start off by saying, I think like what we're talking about right now is when you're thinking about buying a house to live in. And then I would also like to kind of like dig a little bit into like the math of buying as an investment, because from my understanding is like secondary homes or homes not to be lived in actually has like even additional cost implications or like tax implications specifically with the government. But that's like really interesting. Like I never actually thought about the 1 to 2% because that's the exact reason what that's used against cars, right? Like you're kind of like, oh, a car is a massively depreciating asset because all of these parts need to be maintained and et cetera. And the moment you kind of drive off, it's
Yeah.
already starting. But people don't think about a house in that way, which makes me kind of think like the value of the property is actually like the value that people place in like being able to call a home in that physical location.
Yeah.
You're not actually like the value of the property is very seldom the house itself. It's actually more so land, I guess, that we're actually talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's so interesting. And like I love the the rent is the maximum amount you pay to live in a place, and the mortgage is the minimum amount you pay, like as a homeowner to live there. I think that's like incredible framing. I think one other layer I want to add on that is we mentioned Toronto. So like how does being in Toronto like skew just like we've only talked unrecoverable, we haven't even talked mortgage yet, but like how does living in Toronto kind of skew that versus I don't know, pick random place. We have lots of friends that own homes in Ottawa or in Montreal as well, right? Like I know like in my head I'm like can't fish your own yes you did fish your own France. That's a different life. Like, but like, why would that be so different? Why is Toronto so different? Maybe in your own words.
Um, I personally don't think Toronto is like special. I think it's just a desirable place to live, so everything is expensive.
Mm.
There still aren't recoverable costs if you live in Ottawa or Montreal. Um, it's just that you have the unrecoverable costs, and then the price of the home itself is insane.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and I know in Toronto, like a lot of the properties that people buy are condos, and these unrecoverable costs are baked in. Like you're paying $1,000 maintenance fee
Mm.
that you're never getting that money back.
Mm.
So yeah, a lot of those costs are already like baked in if you're buying in a place like downtown Toronto. Um, but yeah, I built Maple Tolu specifically for like the Toronto math because that's where I lived.
Mm.
But I'm sure other cities, Montreal has a lot of, I don't know what taxes they have on homes, but they have a lot of taxes.
They have a lot of taxes in general.
So yeah, there's probably like, you'll have your own version of like weirdness in how you calculate these costs. Yeah.
No, that's fair. And I guess so. We've talked unrecoverable. I don't, and maybe you can talk the mechanics of a mortgage, like down payments, amortization schedules, paying down interest versus paying down your principal, the concept of equity in like a home. I hope this is not going over people's heads, but like I remember, like that was like for me to understand even just like when you pay your mortgage, like how much of it is going to your interest versus your principal was like a big thing and your amortization schedule. But yeah, like maybe like break it down like in terms of how like you thought about it, and then you've already mentioned Maple Tolu, which we'll get into, kind of maybe talk through how you thought about it in building Maple Tolu as well.
Yeah. Where do I start? I think you should look at it from like with time horizon. So
Mm,
I think there's this. I've been thinking about this a lot. There's this concept called the starter home, where like when you have kids, you want to live in a huge detached house in, I don't know, Richmond Hill, random city in the GTA, but you can't afford that now because it's like 1 point something million dollars. So you buy a starter home,
new market.
um, yeah, somewhere. Uh, but when you think in terms of investments don't make sense in the short term. It only like makes sense even the stock market is like this. If you're only investing for 5 years, then I don't think it's really worth it. So if you go buy a starter home, you sell it in 5 years. Let's say there's a return rate of 4%. By the time you sell, um, you pay closing costs, taxes, and all of that. You may not have made enough money for justifying the headache and all of the unrecoverable costs you've basically like suffered
Yeah.
for 5 years. And then there's like the 10 also there's the opportunity cost of the down payment.
Yeah.
So let's say you put in a 20% down payment on a house. You have to consider, what if I just rent and just put this 20% down payment in a diversified portfolio? Let's just say the S&P 500.
Hmm.
Um, the return rate in the stock market exceeds that of the housing market. I had the numbers here, one sec.
Yeah, please. I'd love this because I remember me and Arya having an argument specifically about that. Um,
No,
So
we were talking about this as a group, and me and D were definitely on. I
yeah.
was like, I read a few studies, and every single study basically indicated at every wealth level, unless you literally had like 15 million in cash today, it always made more sense to rent and invest over like whether you had $0 and you needed to borrow everything for the down payment, whether you had $10,000,
mhm.
whether you were at $50,000, like every level basically they were saying it was more advantageous until you got to the part of like hyper wealth basically at that point that you need to diversify more.
Yeah. So I think the nominal return for housing in Canada this is from 1974 to 2024.
Mm.
The nominal return rate is 6%. Adjusted for inflation is 2.24.
Are you kidding me?
Uh,
2.24 rate
yeah,
is the
I
IRR
the annualized inflation rate is like 3.76, which is why.
since 1974 till 2024.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, but then the global stock market the nominal annual return rate is 10.2%.
Hmm.
After inflation is 6.44. So there's like over 3% opportunity cost. You put like 20% down for God knows how long, your 25-year mortgage, versus renting and actually putting this 20% down in the stock market. You're going to come out much better. Um, if you, well, I wouldn't say much better, but like you're going to come out better if you put your money in the stock market. That is one scenario. The second scenario, the second scenario is, um, let's say the mortgage is $5,000. After like investing like okay, let's say the mortgage is $5,000. You put in a 20% down payment,
Hmm.
or you put this money in the stock market. The renter who put this money in the stock market, let's say their rent is 3K, so there's a $2,000 gap.
Yeah.
If they invest that $2,000, which is the difference between the rent and the mortgage every month, there's going to be like a huge gap between the person is basically like who basically has a mortgage and the person who is renting. So I think it's very hard to come up with a case where um buying a house is better, especially in Toronto where it's significantly cheaper to rent a house than to buy.
Mm.
Um yeah.
What about like the thought or let's say the anecdotal like information out there that's kind of um indicating that at least like in the last 10 to 15 years, like the asset prices have scaled to the point where it's kind of like that indirectly makes the opportunity cost so unworth it, right? Because to your point, like there is like a hard math aspect of this, but the other aspect is like if I had 20% of my like of that mortgage in the stock market, and let's say something terrible happened, like my dad needed like emergency medical care and I needed to like fly him to New York. I could do that with the stock market fairly easily.
Yeah.
I might take my money out, let's say worst case scenario at a loss of 5%. It's possible. You're not really going to be able to sell your house, especially if it's like a place that you're living in, right? So even beyond that like baseline cost, do you feel like part of it is like the idea that some of these assets have just gone blatantly overvalued, or is it mostly just a bad asset versus a good asset?
Can you elaborate on the question again?
I think the root question here is we know like anecdote like from a math perspective, the stock market is a better investment
Yeah.
than the housing market, right? But there's also like underlying costs that are not just like the raw revenue that is earned. Do you feel like that basically is like an argument for the fact that the housing market is like way overinflated, even beyond, let's say, the actual tangible like monetary value attached to it?
Um, sure. I think yes, especially in Canada. Um, there's like factors that have really affected prices, such as immigration. For example, a lot of people come to Canada every year, but we don't really have any plans to build to ensure we have enough housing for people. So so the growth rate is also like artificial. And now that, for example, international students, the numbers have been cut down significantly, you're seeing prices drop significantly. So I think in a healthy economy where we bring people into the country, but we plan, we bring in 500,000 people, we build X amount of housing, and we're actually going to do it. Because in Canada we do a lot of things, but we don't do much. Um, I don't think the value of these homes would be as high as high as they are right now in a healthy economy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like you answered that way more eloquently than I asked it. I feel like the root of my question there was mostly just like anecdotally, it does feel like a lot of people say like these assets are overinflated, right? But it kind of sounds like at least from a math standpoint, actually these assets are not overinflated in comparison to other assets. But I think that anecdotal question can kind of be answered with some of these underlying more cultural things that have happened, like for example, the immigration, us bringing in so many international students, those international students going specifically to a few cities, not
Yeah.
kind of being
Mm,
geographically well distributed all throughout Canada. That kind of is the case like all throughout the world, right? Like I bet
Yeah.
if you looked at the UK and the US and Australia, same thing. Like everyone's going to Sydney or Perth in Australia. No one's going to, I'm not gonna make up a
Melbourne.
Cable Park as a city in Australia. I know that
Yeah,
because my client did an event there. So
yeah,
no one's going to Cable Park, Australia,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But cool.
No one's going. Well, not enough people are going to PEI. And one of
Hmm.
funny enough, I went to PEI. Why did I see winners on RCCG? And I swear I saw like at least like 3 to 5 Nigerians in that city. I was like, geez, oh, very random. But I think something I wanted to bring up that you mentioned that was so important, or like a nugget I never deeped, where immigration, housing, we always knew, right? I guess we just didn't know how big of a driver it was. And I think the two, like, housing prices have consistently gone down in the last year. And people are giving PM Carney credit for that. And I think credit is due. Maybe,
Mm.
maybe not. Time will tell. But I think the other thing that's happened, like you mentioned, is the closing of borders for international students. Like I think they're like we're projected to have like population is projected to like reduce, or more people are going to leave than
Yep.
come in for
Yeah.
this year. And it's crazy where it's like just like I don't know if it was just that one tweak, but like that one tweak has probably made the impact on the housing market that Canadians or people have been trying to do. And it's just maybe like to me I was just like, huh, maybe that's a connection like I'm pulling from thin air. But
I think that's just like one of the many factors here. Yeah, we don't build much. I think one problem I've also noticed is the condo market is garbage. There isn't like a lot of good quality apartments downtown Toronto that you could buy. Um, and those prices have been rightfully coming down. But if anything, it's made the prices of like the good condos, like the solid properties,
Go up.
way more expensive.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And part of it is because like we have this obsession of home ownership as a way to build wealth. And I think a lot of these developers have just built these tiny condos because they know they could sell it to someone for X amount of money. And they're like, oh, it's gonna go up 20% in like 2 or 3 years. So because of that mindset, it's fed in. We basically have this cycle of people constantly building housing that doesn't really like meet our needs.
Mm.
It only meets the needs of someone in university. No one is going to have a kid in one of these shoebox condos unless they have no choice.
True.
So even what we've built is not desirable to like a lot of people. So that's like another issue contributing to this.
That's like a beautifully said thing because I think like we try to like think of ourselves as first principle like people like in this house, and like when you really go back to like the first principle of buying or selling anything, it's really like what are you building this for? And like you kind of indicated there, well, no one's gonna live in these besides the uni students, but it's like I'd actually go on top of that. These condos were like built with the investors in mind.
Yeah.
They were built with like I can sell this geography, I can sell the average prices of the condos and the values of those units going up over the last 10 years. I can easily say, I'm going to have this many units, I have these amenities. But then, like, to your point, anytime we've ever like gone into one of these condos, it feels so horrific. Like, it does not feel like a home. You know what I mean? It's just like it was purely built to get someone to be able to go to like a realty, like people bring in all their clients and then they can just basically showcase all the KPIs and then they buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I love that not built for people because I'm looking like we're moving out in a couple months. Yeah, we're leaving this beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Like, I'm so sad. Like if I could afford it, like as my girlfriend, I would stay here, but can't.
How many years have you guys been here?
3.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, like 3 years. Like it's been fantastic.
It will be like almost, it'll basically be 4 when we,
Like we'll
by
be
the time
starting
we
our
move out.
4th year where we move
Yeah.
out,
Oh, wow.
essentially. Yeah, yeah, incredible. Shout out to the guys. But so I bring this up to say I started looking at condos, like downloaded House Sigma, and I'm just like, I'm like, fuck, like I don't want to move in a condo. Like I don't want to go into like an apartment building. And then it's like I'm looking at the prices, and I'm like, oh, the prices are. Prices are actually okay, but like still, like I don't want to like I want to find like a townhouse, or like I'd be willing to do a detached, but then I look at the detached and they're like kind of old. I'm like, fuck. Okay, maybe I go back to a condo. But anyways, like it's just, yeah, you're right. Like a lot of the new builds especially after being used to living here, where I could stretch my legs. We have a backyard. We have like like we're able, like, obviously, like we have roommates and stuff, but like that's fine. Like to have this much space, like I'm okay, and like I don't hate them. Like I actually like them. Interestingly enough, like I actually like the people I live with. But I think that's so interesting. But great point. I think the other thing I wanted to talk through is like Maple Tolu itself. So we've mentioned it. Maybe kind of like walk us through what it is, why you built it, because like there's other, like, calculators. Like there's, like you said, you watch YouTube videos. I've watched YouTube videos. Like people talk to their parents. Why wasn't that sufficient enough? Why did you need to build something? And then what is it that you built?
I think one reason I built this is because in 2026, or did I build this in 2025? It's cheap to build anything now because of AI.
Shout out.
Um, so I there's I watched this person called Ben Felix a lot on YouTube. There's also Ramit Sethi. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to take all of the things I learned, um, like all of the things I'm supposed to look at when running the numbers, and actually like build a website that lets me do that easily. Um, so it lets me see what the outcomes are over time horizons. Like, what is the outcome of buying versus renting over a 5-year horizon, 10-year horizon. So it actually like helps you to learn a lot.
Mm.
Um, it also tells you what the numbers are if you choose to sell, the closing costs, the land transfer tax. Some people don't know that if you put less than a 20% down payment down, you have to pay CMHC insurance. So that's another cost people
I
don't
was not aware of that myself.
because it's risky to like the lender, right?
Yeah, to the mortgage.
Yeah, so you have to pay a certain percentage of like the home as insurance.
Wow.
Yeah. It was kind of like a fun project to build. Yep, that's I think it's a tool you should only like need to use one time. I put in my scenarios and I was like, okay, it makes more sense for me to rent, and I never looked at it again.
No, like it's pretty good. Like I remember after you sent me that tool, I probably sent it to like as many like I sent it to him, sent it to my girlfriend. I should have sent it to my mom if I thought she would, probably be able to like I feel like I sent it to a lot of people and I was like, hey, like before you come at me with any oh you need to like run through these numbers. And I remember like I got hit with questions like oh, and I think I asked you some of the questions, and they're like, oh, like, does this factor in amortization? Does this factor in mortgage rates, like, changing, like, because we do 25 or 30-year mortgages, but the rates change, like, every 5 years here in Canada and stuff like that. And, like, I was getting all these questions. I'm like, in my head, like, without much numbers, without, like, too much empirical evidence, I was like, I'm pretty sure the math here is correct. But I think having this as some form of like empirical backbone, like I think was like fantastic. Like I enjoyed it. Like some people still kind of poo-pooed it. I won't mention names, but I was like, nah, man. Like this is real math. This is real numbers. Like you can't poo-poo it. I don't know, Luke. Did you want to ask anything?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think like, so for the viewers that are listening, basically like what it is that we were looking at here, it's kind of like at a very high level as a consumer who tried it live on the podcast. It's like a rent versus buying calculator. Asks you basic questions in regards to how much you're currently paying or how much you would potentially be paying for rent. Asks you about your income. Very general questions like how much would you want to go up to in terms of costs, and it actually provides you quite a sophisticated dashboard that goes into things like what would you be earning if you were like a basic investor, a more disciplined investor. It breaks down the math for you in several different sections. One of the things I kind of wanted to ask, because you mentioned that specific fee that would happen if we didn't deposit up to 20%, right?
CMHC.
CMHC. And I think one of the things with this buying versus renting, or just money in general, what happens is a lot of people lack the information or the knowledge, right? Like we always say, like knowledge and education is the great equalizer in this house, because if you like understood people or you understood like where they were coming from, it'd be very hard to have a conflict with them, because then you're
Yeah.
able to unlock empathy, right? It feels like something that this tool is doing is solving some of that problem, because it's like so hard for a person to be sitting down in a room and being like, hey, why don't you go figure out based on your income
Yeah.
what makes more sense? But it's easier to be like, hey, by the way, go through like 6 steps, and then a pretty detailed plan is going to be broken down to you. So in the process of you making this, I'd be interested in knowing more about kind of those specific scenarios, right? Like that 20% tax. Was there anything else that you found that, like, obviously me and Delapo were very surprised when we heard about that.
Yeah.
I genuinely did not know about
Very
this
true.
additional tax if I didn't put down, because Ari and I were literally talking the other day and I was like, wait, why would you put down 20%? That makes no sense to me. Like, what do you mean? I can do 10 and I'm gonna do 20? Like, no, I'm gonna invest the other 10% difference, right? But then
Yeah.
now I'm like, oh, wait, maybe I should be thinking about
I
that.
mean, I think if you put less, you still like end up paying more interest at the end of the day. Then there's that plus your CMHC insurance. But there's also the flip side. Putting 20% down, there's an opportunity cost to that. You're putting all this money into your house that will probably, well, with inflation, it's probably like a less than 3% growth a year.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is kind of conflicting. I don't know what the right answer is there.
Yeah. Were there any other hidden costs like that came in? Because like closing costs, I saw like closing costs is on the is on the calculator. Closing costs was something I only learned when one of my friends who I was working with bought a condo, and he was like, "Oh, I paid the condo and now I have to pay like another like 10, 15 grand in closing costs." And I was like, "What the fuck?" Well, like, yeah, any other things, like any other costs that, like, people should be aware of?
I think it was just, I think the main cost people don't know about is the unrecoverable costs,
Mm, okay.
because the all all the ask themselves is how much can I afford in a month? So how much of a mortgage can I afford? And they don't think about like all the other things. Um, I don't think I think closing costs are, I thought they were common knowledge, but when you like sell a place after owning it for 5 years, um, I I find it hard to believe that you would have made that much of a profit after all of the unrecoverable costs and the closing costs. If you own the house for like 10, 20 years,
Mm,
and sure, you'd have made probably a decent amount of money and the closing costs don't matter. So over a short horizon, I think the closing costs just show that it might not be worth it if you're only planning to like own this place for like for 5 years. You're better off just putting the money in the stock market. Yeah.
fair. And like, is there like so that's the closing cost is when you're selling, not when you're buying.
Yeah, when you're selling.
What about when you're buying? Is there like a closing cost there, or?
Um, I'm not sure. I think you probably pay realtor fees.
Yeah,
Okay.
my understanding is it depends on the way that the two realtors negotiate it. Sometimes like I think usually it's the seller side agent that usually eats that cost, but
Okay.
like I think there's like very specific scenarios where they might share it or something, but I'm not 100% confident on that.
Got it. Got it. I mean, either way, like if you're not paying it when you buy it, you're paying it when you sell it. So it's still a cost you have to take in.
So sorry, I had a very my question's kind of dumb, so
Okay, my question is not done. I wanted to ask, like, what do you think, maybe like in making Maple Tolu, like, what do you think was maybe the biggest gap between watching content online and actually putting in numbers in a calculator and seeing, kind of these things? Because you mentioned you were synthesizing knowledge that you learned from like a bunch of these things. Like, did anything kind of like while you were building it and actually, I don't know if you tested these numbers with like your thing before you built it, or maybe it was only after, but kind of curious maybe if there was any moments like that for you.
I think sometimes when you watch videos, um it doesn't really hit home because you're kind of accepting what they say as truth, but when you run the numbers, you actually like understand the effects over a certain time horizon. And when you understand, you're able to like make good decisions. And the reality for a lot of people as well is they're not buying alone. They're buying with their partners or their parents are pushing them to buy.
Mm,
And so you can't just say, oh, if everyone thinks like buying is better and that's the good decision long term, you better be able to like explain why you think that's wrong, not just for the other person but for yourself as well, so you don't like you don't second guess your decision. So basically like running the numbers, actually understanding what I learned from these videos helped me to be more confident in my decision
mm,
and knowing that, yeah, perhaps buying a place is not the right thing for me now.
my question kind of just to like end things off a little bit on a forward facing though, because I feel like we started this off with like, like here's what led us here. We started our professional journeys. We came to Toronto. We're now in a process of kind of transitioning in life, which is why we're thinking about this. Where do you think this leads? Because one of the things I think we're feeling, again, kind of anecdotally, is most people in our generation do not seem to be prioritizing how buying a house as a very high priority. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not investing and growing their wealth. Um, but let's say the majority of people start to shift in their mentality, right? To think housing as an asset is not necessarily very important. Housing as a place to live is important, but I can do it in a variety of different ways, like renting. Is what ends up happening something like what's more akin to what happens in Singapore, where we're basically just renting from the government. The government basically goes and eats up all these assets. Maybe they eat the loss in regards to the over like valuing of them way down the road. Or do we kind of just do things reset? Do you see this as like a cyclical thing, or is are like consumer behavior basically fundamentally changing in a way?
Honestly, I don't see. I think in Canada, people still do desire to own a home because that's kind of how we've been brought up. We've seen older people do that. I think the reason people are thinking or maybe walking away from it now is because the barrier to entry is high. It's too expensive. If you want buying anything that you want, coming up with a down payment is too expensive. So why even dream about it? Or you buy the house and your house poor, because it like takes so much of your income. So I don't think it's because like people are more knowledgeable in terms of like the financial or the math side of things. It's just because it's not very feasible. I'm sure a lot of people still desire to own homes. They want their kids to play in backyards. So yeah, I think it's just the situation in the country. Um,
Okay, I guess on that, like, is there a right time to buy a home? Is there? I think something Luke was mentioning. I don't know if it was off camera or on camera. It's like, is there like, like, oh, like, when I have 15 million in raw cash, then yeah, I can start looking at home. Like, and that's just an example. Is there like, I'm thinking like, when is that time, and what I think a framework or a mindset like I have is, oh, like if I handicap this scenario, like what are maybe like the three triggers I should be watching for, where maybe like if all three get hit, now I know like my decision is like, it's time to make a, like it's time to go, essentially. I'm curious, like what should that be for someone like me, right? Like as I'm like trying to figure my way, like I'm doubling down on the stock market, I would say personally right now, and that's my like goal, like for the foreseeable future. But what are the things I should be watching? And like we can keep it to Toronto. We don't need to generalize, but like in terms of, okay, like good, all right, Doc, well, yeah, cool, like yeah, start looking into buying a house now.
um, this is loaded. Okay, first of all, I want to say it sounds like I'm anti buying a home. If the numbers work, buy your house, sure, if you want to. And sometimes like renting might be better, but maybe it's not that much better. And you want to own a home, or you have a huge family, you want them to, you have want to have multiple rooms. And you might have to like make the more expensive choice of owning a home, then sure, look at the numbers and then look at other factors. Um, and buy something that's not too expensive for you. Yeah, so okay, I think to buy a home, this is more of a personal finance question.
Mm-hmm.
First is what can you afford? When I say what can you afford, like Toronto is an expensive city, so let's say 30% of your gross income. I think that's high, and I think people should be using net because the rest of the money actually goes to taxes. It's not yours. Um, but 30% of your gross income, that's like a magic number people use. So you can start with that.
For rent or for a mortgage or
Both. Um, you can start with that and look at homes in that range. And so maybe you can afford it. But the next question is, what if I lose my job? Um, Whether you rent or you own a home, you need an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of living expenses. So your rent or your mortgage, your utilities, groceries. Because if you lose your job, you don't want to be in a situation where you lose your home or you are not able to pay rent and you have to like borrow money, get into debt just to be able to live. So get your 3 to 6 months, put that aside, and then are you able to save like the down payment? So it sounds like a lot of requirements, I know, but I think that's like the financially responsible way to do it. If you do decide to get a home, what can you afford? ensure it's like 30% and below. Do I have an emergency fund so that if the economy falls apart, if there's an AI redundancy or something, um, I'm still able to live. My family can eat. I can pay the bills, and then you can work on saving the down payment and going to buy your house. Because like oftentimes numbers aren't. It's not just the numbers. Maybe your partner really wants a home, or there's like buying a home is very emotional.
Mm.
So I just suggest, first of all, meet those minimum requirements so you don't have a financial headache. And then take the numbers and take all of the other emotional points and decide together with whoever is a stakeholder in this. Yeah.
Beautifully said, man. I feel like that was such a, in some ways, like such a much more balanced like perspective than something that like me, Delapo, or Ario would have.
Yeah.
Because like what I really take from that is like, when is the right time to buy a house when you can do so comfortably? And like to your point earlier about, it's not necessarily like the valuing of assets, it's really just the barrier to entry is so big now and so daunting that it's really hard to think about, right? Because if, for example, if I were to ask you the same question about when is the right time to invest in the stock market, you probably have a similar perspective where it's like, yeah, probably don't start tossing like all your money at the S&P 500 if you don't have something like a rainy day fund and some
Yeah.
of these other elements already set up, right? So I think to your point, for those living in Toronto, we might be slightly cooked in the short term, but who knows? Maybe AI unlocks ways for us to start hyper growing our net worth, and that unlocks opportunities. But at this exact second, I think like I don't make like $1.2 million a year, so that saving to 20% of the down payment, I'm gonna be a little ways off of that.
Yeah. Yo, for real. Like again, like Luke said, appreciate that answer. Like it was very measured. And like, like you're right. Like it's just I said like so many times, fuck. There's just a bunch of people, there's a lot of other people involved in that decision. That's the truth. My partner wants to be involved in that decision for sure. My mom, like, even though I don't know why, but she wants to be involved in that decision for sure. I'm sure there's, other people that I'm not mentioning yet that will also want to be involved in that decision. And so you have to be able to factor all of that in. I guess maybe a more mechanical question and probably one of my last questions. So I meet these, like I have a rainy day fund. I, I'm making good money. Like all these stakeholders are on my neck, and I'm like, okay, fuck, like like I am comfortable. How much should my down payment be?
I don't know.
Like I'm saying like 20% because we're talking about I didn't know about the CMHC insurance thing. So like, are you saying like avoid that at all costs, or you're like eat it up? Like especially if I'm comfortable, right? And to answer that opportunity cost question, right? Like it's like incrementally in the stock market, like like I don't know.
I think I don't know the answer to that, but I think one way we can look at this based on this podcast episode is run the numbers. Like, uh, Maple Tool like gives you a bunch of scenarios. It doesn't give you this one, but I think the action items do. What is the scenario? What is like the total cost of ownership if I just put 10% down,
Mm.
and I put the rest in the stock market, and there's a CMHC insurance, like how much am I paying for this home at the end of like the 25-year period?
True.
How much would my assets in the stock market have grown? What is the scenario if we put 20% down? I have less in the stock market, so like the opportunity cost, maybe 20% down might not be as good as the other option because like the stock market, the return is higher.
Mm.
So I think the answer to your question is just run the numbers.
No, that's a great answer because you're right. You're like, there's no hard and fast. This is the principle, like, or this is the way. Always go 20% if this, or always go less than 20 if that. You're like, run the numbers, man. Like, man,
I also have a disclaimer
go.
because I think we're getting towards the end.
Yeah.
But all of this renting stuff doesn't matter if you're not a disciplined investor. If you just like YOLO the down payment you'd have paid to own a home, the homeowner is going to come out better on the other side. So
Yeah.
renting requires discipline. And one of the good things about a mortgage is that it forces you, like, if you don't pay the mortgage, you're going to be homeless. And nobody wants that. And so they're forced to be disciplined and actually like pay this every month. So that's one of the advantages of owning a home. But if you know you're going to be disciplined, you invest a down payment. The second level of discipline is also investing the difference in the mortgage versus the rent. That puts you like on in good stead. If you're not going to be disciplined enough to do that, then maybe buying a house
That's a really good.
is the right choice for you.
Yeah, when you invest in a house, like it's impossible to stop investing into that asset.
There's so many consequences. You're homeless. You could get divorced. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Whereas like the stock market, it's like how many people are like, oh, I wish I was investing monthly, and like they just did the simple thing of even setting up auto deposits into their RSP. It's like
Yeah.
probably a very small percentage, and
Yep.
it's very interesting. The other thing that I wanted to kind of just share from hearing your kind of balanced approach is like I had this thought throughout this episode, and like I'm having a bit more empathy towards these other stakeholders, like my mom, for example. And I think what I wanted to say maybe from my end, just as one of my last thoughts, is like sometimes I'm like, oh, like my mom is like, yo, why are you not buying like this house? Or like, why is that not the immediate next thing you're thinking about? And I'm like, everyone I know that did this is cash, like is house poor, right? But from her perspective, she was like, the people that she grew up with that did the right things in life, that, you know, went to school and got a good job and like were getting married, this is what they did. In our generation, it might look a little different. The people who did the right things might be actively investing in the stock market and looking for opportunities to get into a house. So I think like for me, it's like, yeah, maybe I'm like, you know, still get off my case a little bit, but like, cause it's like, dude, like we're talking about $1 million property here. But on the other hand, it's like, oh, where she's coming from is more so just like, hey, I want to make sure you're headed down the right path. Because for me, owning a house was that path, right?
Yeah.
Whereas for us, maybe that stepping stone is just like a couple more years down the line instead of like it being this stage sort of thing. So I thought that like that balanced approach that you shared just about like the finance side of things was really, really cool.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And I know I keep saying final question, but real final question from me now. I'm taking it back to Ibadan for me, but I think Lagos for you. Like, is home like I keep saying like growing up, I don't there wasn't like a crazy emphasis on home ownership. Like it was always like I know it was crazy. It was always a big deal when someone builds their own house because in Nigeria that's kind of the thing, right? We don't just buy like
Yeah.
you buy the land, you build the land,
Yeah.
you dig the hole to find water in on
Yeah.
your land, you electrify your land yourself. That was like a big deal, but I don't like it wasn't and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe I don't know, but I'm just thinking like growing up was how big do you think that influence was for us?
I mean, I don't think it's that different because
Mm,
so I talk to my parents now. I'm like, why don't you guys like live in a nicer area? Because my parents live it's this place in Lagos called Ikorodu,
yeah.
and like there's nicer places.
Yeah, shout out Ikorodu, my uncle is.
And
Zlatan. I'm
and
joking.
if they chose to rent, they could easily like live in a much nicer neighborhood,
Hmm.
and the rent is something that's affordable for them. But my dad's like, at my age, like, why am I renting? Why am I dealing with the landlord?
Mm.
So I think, sure, it's not as crazy as it is in Canada, but if growing up, I was like, I'm gonna buy land somewhere, have my house built someday. And also investing in stocks wasn't popular back then, so I don't know if there were other avenues of growing wealth.
Mm.
Yeah. I think it is big back home as well,
Yeah,
and something
yeah,
people aspire to.
yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think that yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point because there's not many alternatives, right?
Yeah.
I think the main way of building wealth is going to school and getting the 9 to 5
Yeah.
is probably the primary way to build wealth.
I think even people who older people who grew up in North America, like back then you had to invest with your bank, probably a clunky process. You had to pay $5 to buy any stock.
Mm.
Meanwhile, we can buy stocks for free now.
That's so true.
We have index funds. Everyone knows what an index fund is.
Mm-hmm.
Your parents probably didn't know what an index fund was in like 19. How old is the S&P 5?
Yeah,
Not that old. Not that
Yeah.
old, yeah.
no, it's pretty old. When you, no, am I old?
I mean, I think it is old. Probably I don't know.
Let's
It
see.
it, it
It's
is
less than 500 for sure.
Okay, yeah, it's less than 500. Okay, it's since 1957.
Yeah, 60, 65 years.
Yeah, 65 years. Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's not that old. That's like
so like
our parents' age ish. Yeah.
buying an index fund is not in like every it's not like public knowledge.
Yeah.
So I guess building a house was like the best way to build wealth, but now we have other avenues we're more knowledgeable about these other avenues. So things are justifiably different for our generation.
So much empathy, man.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But also like that's, and I know is I also did the same thing where I'm like, this is my last thought, but like this also made me like, yeah, like to your point, the buying versus renting situation is not the same in every country.
Yeah.
It's like in a many Asian countries, it's like owning is the number one wealth status because it means like you have the financial resources to do certain things. Like when you live in North America, a lot of those underlying things are guaranteed in some ways.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the idea of like, if I'm gonna go turn on the faucet, is water gonna come out?
Mm.
Never a question.
Yeah.
Never a question, right? But if you were to rent versus if you had like your own compound, you know if you own your own compound, my family is always gonna be able to shower, they're always gonna be able to do these things. In Canada, like if we stop paying rent tomorrow, our landlord couldn't kick us out. We actually like again, I told you this, like
I'm
I'm
board, yeah.
I'm currently trying to help my parents like get rid of a tenant in Peterborough, and I told them this a year ago. I'm like, this is going to be a 2 year process probably, because I heard of stories in Ottawa, and it is exactly turning out this way. There's so many months of unpaid rent, but guess what? The second that person now pays a little bit, now they have intent to pay.
Oh.
So the landlord tenant board can take that in, right? Like in Canada, you could literally be residing in a property that you're renting, and if you've lived there for a decent amount of time and you stop paying, they will not be allowed to kick you out.
Yeah.
That is definitely not the case if you're renting in like
Yeah.
in a different country, right? So that's I think that's also like a
police funds. Come on,
you know what I mean?
Police to get you out of your house or thugs. One of
Yeah,
the two.
my mom thought she could do that. She thought she could just call the police on her tenant. I'm like, Mom, the police are probably gonna be on her side,
Yeah.
like if anything. So
Yeah.
wow, that's yeah.
No, it's incredible, man. Tolu, like, thank you. I've used Maple Tolu before, and like I learned so much using it. But obviously, like speaking with you as well, like I think you added like that human layer as well in terms of hey, like numbers certainly one thing, but stakeholders another thing. The concept of irrecoverable costs, okay, unrecoverable costs, that's huge. Like I'm gonna keep that. The mortgage being a minimum, rent being the maximum. I think that's incredible. Obviously, the CMHC insurance, that's a nugget like I'll take with me. I think also just kind of running the numbers, man. Like there's no hard and fast like rules to doing this. I think like you always have to total cost of ownership. Like as a sales guy in software, that's so big because people are like, okay, the cost of your software, the cost of the cloud, the cost of the engineer that I'm gonna have to hire
Yeah.
to run this new software. Like the cost of the migration from the old one, and like I have customers and prospects asking me TCO,
Yeah.
TCO, and it's like bringing because this is knowledge and these are concepts I'm familiar with, but am I applying them into like my personal finance or my personal life? Maybe not. I think one of the most important things, like you kind of just shared, last, at least for me, is the alternatives we have now with ETFs, with the accessibility to investing, with the ease and the access. Like by far, this is the most accessible the stock market has ever been since it's been created. Like the concept of retail and retail investment and the Wall Simples, the Robin Hoods, this $0 investing, like that makes the math and the numbers fundamentally different. And then I think finally, like you can't take the human being that's making these decisions out of that, right? You have to
Yep.
be disciplined, right? And with this tried and true method of owning a home, like the discipline has been baked into the process, but with these new alternatives, this is the investing and all, the discipline is not baked in, and so
Yeah.
ultimately you still have that responsibility. I was just rattling off a couple of the big takeaways that I got, and all of that to say, hey man, I really really appreciate you, coming here today, spending time with us, and yeah, man, like looking forward to continuing to build and hopefully all of us being disciplined investors and maybe even owning a home someday in Toronto. We'll see.
Yeah. Let's see. Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
fantastic, of course. And yeah, viewers, appreciate you guys. From me, no, what do I say? I don't say one love, I say aces. So
You say aces, yeah.
yeah,
But check out Maple Tolu. It's going to be in the description on any platform that you are listening to. YouTube, I almost said Shopify, Spotify, Apple Music, if you guys exist.
yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a different
There's
another reason why Apple Music. Anyway, doesn't matter.
they do
Um,
videos now, by the way. Anyways, that's all me.
yeah, that's still late. Should Spotify been having that, but it's okay.
This is not an Apple Spotify beat. Jesus fucking Christ.
But yes, Maple Totally will be in the captions. Use it to settle an argument. I know this is one of the highest use cases in our household.
Hmm.
But yeah, like Totally said, run the numbers, right? Like get familiar with it, because I think we all want a place that we can call home, and it would be nice to own it.
I agree.